I want to take you back to a time in prehistory. I want to make this time travel in order to explore my hypothesis that I mentioned earlier that the four brain learning approach isn't a product of our education system. However, I believe it is the other way around. That is, that the education system and subjects that we have today are a result of the four brain learning approach, which in turn is the effect of our brain properties. So, the first thing that the prehistoric human would need to do is to communicate. First, it would have to use sign languages and body language. Later on, some words would have come. Soon, there would be drawings that we can see in the caves. So, this is the right lower brain that we know as the information quadrant in this book. As per the name itself suggests, the first thing that the early Homo sapiens had to do was to get information and give information. That would not be something totally new, as other animals like monkeys also convey such information. The same holds true for even smaller animals like bees, where they provide information of where the flowers are or where they can make the next beehive. In this way, language became the basis of any form of society, not limited to humans but even to animals. There was a need of words and thus vocabularies developed. There would need to be some kind of grammar to make sense of what is being conveyed. Slowly, more and more information would have been able to be passed on as the vocabulary increased. For many thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years, this information quadrant would have evolved, and consequently, various laws that would guide behavior among the various people in that society would have been developed. Again, this would be more information that would have been codified in the form of language. As time passed by and the society grew larger, writing would have been invented because it's a much more efficient way to store and transmit information. Along with writing, reading would have become a natural evolution in this right lower brain quadrant. So, what is certain is that the information quadrant is the first of the four brain quadrants to have developed. Even when a baby cries, he is using this information quadrant to express his hunger or pain or even discomfort. That is why maybe the first thing that we learn in school is the alphabet and how we relate it to what we see in the world, like A for apple, B for ball, C for cat. In this way, with the innate property of our brain, especially the information quadrant, we learned the letters, then we learned to combine them to make words. We joined the words using a certain grammar to make sentences, paragraphs. In this way, now we could write and read, which would be the full blossoming of the information quadrant. The ability for us to write down would have invented the subject of history. We would, in this way, know what happened in the earlier generation and even many centuries ago. Knowing our past and being able to process that information in this particular right lower brain quadrant, Homo sapiens would have developed a strong sense of identity and purpose. In this way, it is only natural that the first thing that we should learn is English or any language. And this is what I have done in this book also. Next, continuing with our imaginary prehistoric human, we can easily visualize him having to count the number of people in his tribe. Now, that would require some kind of logical thinking, especially mathematics, that also arithmetic at the beginning. And then let's have a situation where our prehistoric man brings back a gazelle from his last hunting trip. Then he would need to know how to divide that source of protein among his total number of tribesmen. So naturally, the logical side of the brain would have developed as a necessity as the winter time approached, and they would need to make shelter. They would need to be able to determine how long and how many people would need to work on them to finish on time. The arithmetics are indeed getting more complex. So, the second brain quadrant to develop is the skill quadrant. Being able to count would naturally lead to develop the skills of making fire, knives, arrows, and so on, because it's a step by step process and one thing builds on top of the other. This particular development of the left lower brain quadrant in this way enables skills to be transferred and learned in the tribe. As the society grew bigger, they would need to keep track of the grains. So, some kind of accounting would have developed. If we want to be able to survive the cold winter, we should logically be able to keep account of how much grain we have and how to ration it. So the brain property of logical progression and a methodical approach enabled the development of statistics and later on computer science. But it's a progression of the original need of humans for logic and details. Talking about statistics, the early Homo sapiens would have faced the problem of making decisions, and he would need to make some kind of averages. In a case of disputes, there would be a need to determine ranges of opinions, like which is the most popular opinion and which one is the least popular one. Again, my point is that the subjects that we have today exist because of the four different brain quadrants and their properties. So, continuing with this early Homo sapien, after mastering the transfer of information and skills, he would have looked into the sky and wondered, what are all those shiny dots? Why there is day and there is night? Why is food tastier when it is cooked? When is the best time to plant certain seeds and to harvest them? Which of the plants have got the capacity to heal diseases? By mixing which plants can they make different substances, either for food or for medicine or even for building materials? In this way, the left upper brain quadrant of our early ancestors began to be activated. They began to question things, they began to find patterns, causalities, they learned how to make hypotheses as well as to test them. They learned to make predictions based on their modeling of reality. You can say that their brain expanded. I am not a neurosurgeon and also not an anthropologist, so I make no claim in the validity of my imaginary prehistoric story that talk about the brain's property, and how human society evolved. My objective is not to convince you of my academia or even cleverness. Instead, my objective is just to help students and teachers to understand this four brain learning approach because it really works. So let me continue. Neuroscientists say that the prefrontal cortex, which is actually the upper brain, developed later on. So even in the four brain learning approach model, this is how I've presented it. The left upper brain developed later on. This would lead to what we now know as science and its various branches like physics, chemistry, biology. There are many other sub branches which I'm not mentioning here. So, like in the earlier two quadrants, my point is that because the Homo sapien brain developed this third knowledge quadrant, our thirst for this very knowledge increased, and we desired and hungered for more understanding of overall patterns, causalities, big pictures, concepts. Among some of the early Homo sapiens, it could have occurred that the pleasure of this new knowledge quadrant was so high that they would have stopped interacting with their fellow tribesmen and not cared about the mundane affairs and having to make a living through the various skills like agriculture or hunting. Instead, they would have been enamored by investigation of natural phenomenon. Some of them would have spent their lives classifying the various plants in the forest that would enable the skill quadrant people turn them into procedures that would have enhanced the quality of life for everybody. In this way, those who sought more knowledge, even though not contributing to the daily output of society, would have been still highly prized because their findings could be turned into skills, new ones, that in turn would make their lives much better. In this way, using that information quadrant, they would have made new laws, new systems, new directives in which learned men of knowledge, would be of the highest status. Till this day, we still respect people of knowledge more than those with skills and the ability to convey information. For example, we still have more respect for scientists than for plumbers or for the newsreader. Now, the last expansion of the brain would occur when the right upper brain would come into activity. Some of the prehistoric Homo sapiens who would have got plenty of knowledge and some of them who would have got plenty of information would be able to combine various ideas to create something new. In this way, they were the first innovators. While both the knowledge quadrant people and the wisdom quadrant people excelled in non-material, non-physical ideas that we call concepts, the knowledge quadrant people were still very logical, procedural. They followed rules of knowledge. However, the wisdom quadrant people were not bound by the mental change of logic. They could be illogical and still not feel the cortisol in them, that is stress for deviating from what has been considered obvious and mandatory. Instead, the wisdom people were happy to mix the concepts similar to the knowledge quadrant people with the richness and freedom of expression of feelings and thoughts of the information people. So at first, this led to poets, singers, writers, amazing arts of cave paintings. These creative lots would have risen from the information quadrant into this creative atmosphere of the right upper brain quadrant. However, some of the early Homo sapiens would have reached this wisdom quadrant starting from the knowledge quadrant itself. They would have a very strong base in the sciences, and thus they would become the inventors, the explorers, the discoverers. They would be the ones who would bring new inventions, new ways of thinking. People like Adam Smith, who produced books like The Wealth of Nation, that heralded capitalism, that enabled all this technology that we are enjoying today, are the outcome of this wisdom quadrant. So subjects like economics and geography are highly conceptual and at the same time not so logical. We say that rain occurs because of clouds that form because of water evaporation. However, we can't make rain artificially in a lab, even though we evaporate it. So it's stretching um, our imagination. I'm not just going to forcefully try to convince you that economics or geography must be categorized under the wisdom quadrant. That's besides the point. I thought that these two subjects best fitted in this particular quadrant. That said, like every other subject, they too have components in the other three quadrants that, if you recall, I had mentioned earlier on. This is a very important angle of the four brain learning approach. So, through this example of the prehistoric Homo sapien, all I wanted to do was to emboss or engrave the concept of the four brain learning approach in your own thinking. Now, I want to end this section by re-emphasizing that even though I have classified the 12 subjects into a single quadrant, each of the subject have components of the other three quadrants. The only way to master any subject is to learn the four components of each of them. For example, even though mathematics falls into the skill quadrant, in order to master it, you must understand how it is linked to daily usage. That is, you must stimulate the information quadrant in order to master math. Also, you must know the overall pattern and big picture of the various topics on the mathematics and even of the various equations. It would be very difficult to be creative with mathematics, but cross-pollinating mathematics with another subject like psychology would make it even more so interesting. How so, you'd ask? Let's say we are talking about a mental disorder called depression. Instead of just defining what it is, we can say what is a function of depression. Is it just the genes, or is it society, or is it the technology, or is it a past trauma? How are these various parameters interrelated? Do they add up or do they multiply each other? Well, you got the point. So in this way, you have got a very strong foundation of the four brain learning approach that will definitely help you master any subjects. I'll be using the same approach that I've just described with the mathematics and how to use the four brain learning approach in each of the coming chapters.